Paterson Price for Monday, December 9th, 2024, coming in from the Nation Network studio, built by Arbor Lee, here at the historic Wall Center. In this program, a presentation of Bet365. Open an account with Bet365 today. Bet on a huge range of markets. So, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary. At Bet365, use code NATION when opening that account. Matt Sakaris alongside BC Winter Games graduate Blake Price, four-time Juno Award winner Mike Rogerson. Hidden switches.
You don't get to. You're not putting a resume patter on your name.
No. I'm shining you guys.
Magna cum laude at Carleton.
Oh, thank you.
Journalism.
There were some awards and prizes, but save that for another show. Big show coming up for you after a weekend unlike any other in Vancouver. Two Canucks games, including a Sunday matinee. Don't do that a whole lot.
No.
Yeah, and then there was this concert series that hit BC Place. Kind of a big deal.
They weren't in concert with each other, by the way. But
no,
it was good fortune.
They weren't.
It was good fortune that it was a matinee. Got out of the way.
Could you imagine being a Cirque du Soleil performer? And when you take the show on the road, you're kind of a big deal in the towns that you go to. You were number 3 on Friday in a very, very tiny radius.
In a square block. Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We'll start with our Surrey Mitsubishi poll question. Who put on the best show in Vancouver this weekend? Quinn Hughes, Nikita Kucherov. Could have had Braden Point on this poll as well, but Kucherov, the finalist for Hart Trophy last year, and then there was Taylor Swift. You can vote at the Sakaris and Price X and YouTube channels. Both of us had family who went to Taylor Swift. Mm-hmm. Mine's still levitating. Yours?
Yes, very much so. Yes. Mm-hmm. I don't know that either of them can speak.
Right.
Today. A lot of screaming.
Right. And like the worldwide shine for this being the final stop on the Eras Tour.
Did you see the celebrity list of people that were in attendance?
Holy cow. It was
Eddie
large.
Vedder was here.
Eddie Vedder, yeah.
Strange.
Uh-huh. Chelsea Handler, Nikki Glaser, all the blonde comedians.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh. It was, and I got to say, because I wondered, like, what would traffic be like? Things seem to go pretty smoothly.
You know what? We seem to abide rules pretty well here. Remember for the Olympics,
outside of Game 7 in the Stanley Cup Final, we are a rules-oriented city.
But Matt, maybe we just didn't explicitly ask them not to riot. Maybe they just need precise direction, because when people are told, do not travel down, use public transit. Olympics here, everybody listened. Maybe we just, next time the Canucks are in the Stanley Cup Final, we have to say, and you may not riot afterwards. Mm-hmm. And then we won't.
I mean, I saw the lines for public transit coming out of the Canucks game and the Taylor Swift concert on Friday, and they were gigantic, but it seemed like orderly.
Yeah.
No big news story came of it.
And it was easy to swing by and pick up the kids afterwards.
Yeah.
And drop them off beforehand. Mm-hmm. Like, it was really
For
easy.
the most part.
Yeah.
Given there's 60,000 people going to the stadium on top of nearly 20 going to the hockey rink. I voted Taylor Swift. How can you not? As we talked about on Friday, there are very few, if any, comparables in the history of music to this.
I'll go with Quinn Hughes, although all three of our options here are at the tops of their respective, professions.
That's right.
And all executed. Mm-hmm. Magnificently. So
the
all
best
deserve credit.
defenseman in the world, the best winger in the world.
And the pop star of the world.
The pop star's pop star.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Quinn Hughes suffered injury, though, and then still performed. So
I need
to give it to him.
You needed a little blood from Taylor.
Yeah. That seems to be
perhaps a trip and fall on stage. She gets right back up and keeps singing.
It seems to be the early battle, by the way. It's Hughes v. Swift. This is the toughest one-on-one Quinn's ever had.
Exactly. Anyways, quite a weekend. It's lease month at Surrey Mitsubishi. Leasing a car, better option, lower monthly payment, flexibility to drive a new car every few years, convenience of staying under warranty, minimal maintenance costs. Plus, you avoid the long-term commitment of ownership and the depreciation hit on the car. This month at Surrey Mitsubishi, the Outlander PHEV lease $182 a week. You need a gas Outlander, that's fine. Got that covered as well. The 2024 at $105 a week. The Eclipse Cross at just $100 a week, and the RVR only $87 per week. Plus, you can skate away with a $1,000 winter tire package and no charge to your maintenance package. Don't miss out on that $5,000 government rebate on the PHEV, the Outlander, while it lasts. See dealer for details and term. All leases are OAC. Surrey Mitsubishi, 13820 104th Avenue in Surrey, or online at surreymitsubishi.ca. We'll go to our... Yes.
Michael on the chat, Taylor Swift dug deep, gave 110% and won the third.
Did she ever?
And by the way, did Quinn bleed or what? There was a lot of blood on these.
He's a bleeder.
And I agree with what Shorty and Thomas were talking about on TV. They took their time cleaning that up, just on the off chance it was going to be enough time to get Quinn Hughes back on the ice.
Jeff said take your time out. Jeff was encouraging Tocchet to take his time. We don't talk to him, but what do you think? Take the time out and buy him even more time?
In hindsight, it wouldn't have been enough. In hindsight, it wouldn't have been enough anyway. Mm-hmm. So, but if he comes back literally as time is expiring on the 4-minute power play, then it looks bad that he didn't. So, but not a bad idea, I guess.
Top story by Yellow Dog Brewing, Neighborhood Brewing. Foolish Winery, split weekend, but still struggling against the better teams. Tampa comes in here and wins. Tampa's won both games against the Canucks this year, 3-5-2 versus last year's playoff teams and teams that are currently on playoff spots for this season. And these home struggles continue to be a thing. You know, we've talked about how fantastic they've been on the road. I mean, road warriors here, your Vancouver Canucks. But 4-6-3 at home. The paying public, they need a little more. Sunday, it was the Stars making the difference. Braden Point with 4 points. Nikita Kucherov with 3. And it was a special teams game. Here's Coach Tocchet.
5-on-5 play, special teams won the game for them and their best players. But I thought 5-on-5, we were fine. Just, obviously unfortunate. Can't have that too many men. And then that's it. The Kucherov show, and, there you go. So that's the way I look at it.
Often when they have too many men penalties.
Used to be a bigger thing with the Canucks.
They used to, but generally speaking, you hear a coach say, and that's on us. Mm-hmm. That's coaching. He didn't.
No.
It's almost like he is upset with a certain player or two, and the comings and goings of the bench.
Second time in a week, I think it's fair to say you could red circle officiating. The Minnesota game, there were a lot of cranky Canucks fans about the officiating in that game, and I thought that was fair for the most part. As we have said, that officiating's been pretty good in Canucks games this year, but Minnesota on Tuesday last week was an exception. I think you can red circle yesterday's game as well. How does Geekie not get a cross-checking penalty for that hit on Jolson? Into the boards from behind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But your Stars have to show up as well. In a game like that where Point and Kucherov, just back from injury, are playing at that high level, and these are, Kucherov doesn't get a chance because his team's not invited, but these are Four Nations level players, Braden Point, Cirelli as well. And Paterson goes without a shot on goal. Only the second time that's happened this year, but needed more from Paterson yesterday. Frankly, needed more from Besser defensively on that one play, where if he's got a stick down, he probably stops the pass. And this is the third time in the last 10 games where the Canucks have given up 2 power play goals. The penalty killing is still middle of the pack, but special teams and not being able to convert on the power play an issue for the Canucks.
So let me ask you this. Most of this was on the power play.
Yep.
But 3 times in the game, at least 3, by my count, Elias Paterson skates at full speed, full stride, hungry, and tries to take on pretty much the entirety of the Tampa team. Gets through 2 to 3 players, but there's 2 more out there, and the play dies, and they send the puck down the length of the ice and clear.
Yep.
I'm of 2 minds there. All of it was unsuccessful, never created a chance. But he tried to do it.
Yeah.
And the fact that he was even trying it, I'm going to put some silver lining around that unsuccessful night for Paterson. In that,
well, it demonstrates the confidence that wasn't there earlier in the year.
Right.
That is without a doubt.
And again, he got by a couple of players, but he tried to do everything.
And not really his game.
No.
Elias is a lot of things.
Well, beating 1 or 2 it is.
Sure, but
Brody or Deeks.
go through the whole team is
Yeah.
not really his.
So I'll give Petey a pass, I guess, is my point there.
Mm-hmm. I think that's fair.
I think really the lesson here is, especially with Philip Roenick out here, Matt,
And JT.
you lose Quinn Hughes, though. No, but on the D, you lose Quinn Hughes, and that team became AHL quality, it felt like, on the back end. It really did.
Yeah. Even though I think you can argue that Myers and Soucy have been better here.
Of late, yeah.
Of late. Like Myers in the third period last night was damn good. I mean, he creates that Sherwood goal. Which is why, and we'll get to it later in the program, I am a little surprised that we're not hearing more buzz about the Canucks being ready to make a deal here. We talked to Darren Dreger about that. So 14-8-4, heading into game 27 of the season. That's tomorrow night at Rogers Arena, Tuesday against the St. Louis Blues. Game 27 is effectively a third of the way through the season. 3 times 27, 81. How are you feeling about 14-8-4?
Yeah.
I'm still reasonably optimistic. In fact, I'm not going to give them an A grade, but I think they're a solid B to B plus. We'll see what happens tomorrow.
I mean, there's context in where all these wins have come from.
Of course. Of course. Like, I think as much as I suspect that the road record won't be as good from here, because how could it possibly?
But the regression should go both ways.
I am more convinced that the home record is going to rectify. I think this is a Vancouver Canucks team that under Tocchet, and really under Tocchet's style, plays a very good road game. 5-man team defense, hold on to the puck a whole lot, right? Get good goaltending. That formula travels. You can win a lot of games in road rinks doing that. I think the home record will correct here some. In fact, I would suspect on this 6-game road trip, 2 games into it.
I saw Jay Fresh did a bunch of sort of quarterly report cards, if you will. Mm-hmm. One third mark almost report cards. Canucks team defense is legally.
It's still a thing. It's still. And when you have that element, like there's a lot of teams in the Vancouver Canucks neighborhood right now, upper middle class, if you will, because they're better than a mid-pack team. You know, third place in your division on a playoff spot. There are a lot of teams in that neighborhood that don't have that element, that don't have a defining staple of their game, if I can borrow a Tocchet team term, that I think will serve you well over the full 82. When you add the fact that their Vezina Trophy finalist goaltender has not played a game this year.
But they've been getting Vezina quality goaltending.
Fair enough. Fair enough. When you add the fact that their number 1 center has now missed 8 consecutive games, when you add the fact that their top right pair defenseman has now missed a handful of games, when you take a look at Dakota Joshua, who clearly is not yet back to form, right? I mean,
yeah,
it's 2 assists in 12 games for Dakota Joshua. And even losing your top goal scorer from last year, Brock Besser, and he finally shown some signs of life, I would argue, this weekend, where he'd been a little coolish since coming back. When I put all of that together, I still think you're looking at a pretty darn good club. I still think you're looking at a club that is going to have home ice advantage in the first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs, maybe no more than that. But I still see them being a top 2 finisher in the Pacific. Third place, I think, is your absolute, I don't want to say your floor, because it is conceivable that the wild cards are conceivable here, but I would expect they're going to be somewhere in the 2-3 hole in the Pacific Division.
Kings and Oilers are firing on all cylinders right now, so the Canucks are having trouble gaining any ground right now.
Well, they're ahead of the Oilers, or at least they're tied with the Oilers in points. They have a game in hand.
Yeah.
I'll give the Kings an awful lot of credit, because 10-2-1 at home, winners of 5 straight. How can you not? I'm still not a big believer in the LA Kings. Vegas, I thought, would be very good this year, because I think they've got to be in their bonnet with the way last year ended, and, of course, the entirety of the hockey world being against them for the way they manipulated LTIR. And I think it was also a lesson learned that, hey, you can't just punt the final quarter of the regular season, drop a great player into your playoff lineup, and think everything is going to be working clockwork. So, look, I think for the most part, given the circumstances, the Canucks have done a pretty good job through the first third of the season.
Now, some teams are addressing things already, right? You've seen
That's the thing.
You've seen the New York Rangers do all their shakeups with a winning record, in no immediate danger in the standings, but them saying, nope, this needs to change, blah, blah, blah. It's changing now. The Colorado Avalanche have just traded for a goaltender.
Oh, who's this?
Mackenzie Blackwood is headed to the Colorado Avalanche, many bit like what Blackwood has done in a tough environment in San Jose. And going the other way is Georgiev. So they are giving up on Georgiev, exchanging him for Blackwood, a bunch of picks going back and forth, and Kovalenko to Nikolai Kovalenko to San Jose. Giovanni Smith, a forward, headed to Colorado in addition to the pick swapping. So it's a big trade. 2 players and picks going each way as well. But my goodness, you wonder how Georgiev can stay in the league at this point with the way that he's been playing. So many people are loving this trade for the Colorado Avalanche and saying that this officially puts the Avs back into contender status. And, of course, the Vancouver Canucks happen to face the Avalanche in 1 week's time.
I saw Kovalenko made some top 10 Calder race lists last week. Of course, his father could play some. I'm not sure Blackwood may be an upgrade on Georgiev, but do you think Blackwood is the answer there?
He's a 9/11 save percentage this season. It's pretty darn good.
On a bad team.
Yeah, on a bad team. And he was liked in New Jersey, because remember, New Jersey was playing very poor defensively. They played very poor defensive hockey at that point. His early years in the NHL with the Devils, when they were a little bit better team, he had 915 and 918 save percentages. So, hey, he's scads better than Georgiev, that's for sure. Mm-hmm. And they get him at a decent freight, and he's only 28. They want to invest in him, they can.
What are our friends at Yellow Dog up to this week?
Well, the
big week.
Chase My Tail Pale Ale is on special for the month of December.
Love that one.
So check it out. 4 packs, as well as the High Five Hazy IPAs at your government and private liquor stores.
Archer Shelove sent down to the farm, and now we await Thatcher Demco. He did say on Friday, it was funny because people who were pointing to a potential Friday or Sunday start, Thatcher himself kind of downplayed it, right? Are you getting to the point with Demko where this is, is he too finicky? Is he too thoroughbred? Do you just have to get him in the starting gate here at some point? I sense an apprehension with Demko.
Yeah, a little bit too. I do sense that as well. I don't know if that's just a public shield to throw up a little bit of a mystery as to when he jumps in, or if it's legitimately there's some nervousness about coming back. I don't know.
I say, and look, here's the thing. Everything is about the playoffs, right? Like
Yep.
we think the Canucks are going to make the playoffs. We have a good sense the Canucks are going to make the playoffs. So if everything in his world is attuned to making sure he can play playoff games and play consecutive playoff games and play consecutive playoff series, so be it. And especially since they have been getting extraordinary goaltending from Kevin Lankinen. That said, Blake, so much of Talkett's program is about, got to push through. Some days you're not going to feel great. Still need you. I was watching some football shows this week where different panelists were talking about college football shows. Panelists were talking about, boy, when I talk to NFL general managers, more and more what's coming up is, are you available? Can you play? Nick Saban, the old Alabama coach, was one of the big differences between collegiate and pro players is the pro guys push through and play through pain. In Demko's case, it seems to me like he wants everything to be right here, and that's fine if you're taking the long view, and I'm sure the coach can understand and appreciate that. I do also wonder, though, about Demko in the playoffs, and if he feels a little something, where's he going to be at? Where's his head going to be at? Where's his game going to be at?
Best thing they could do for that is to make sure that load never gets too heavy then. All signs point to tomorrow versus St. Louis, in that he's now backed up on a couple of occasions and has got the smell of the rink back in his lungs, showing up at the normal time, while not preparing for the starter's net, just into the routine of game day again. He's had that. And he's not backing up unless he's pronounced 100% fit and ready to play. Because, of course, if you're backing up, Matt, and somebody charges the net and takes out your keeper, guess what? You're playing. So he's healthy enough to play. If he wasn't healthy enough to play, he would not be backing up, because at any moment, boom, you're in.
Well, that's what I mean. That's a little odd to me. That's a little odd to me that you would use him as a backup if he's not.
But I think it's the routine thing, and I think I think that's why if he doesn't play tomorrow versus the Blues, then it's weird. I think tomorrow.
No, I would give it one more, because he said 3 games back up, so this would be the 3rd game. So if you're not ready to go Thursday, to me, that's when, something.
But why would you throw him in versus the Stanley Cup champions?
Well, because we got to play sometime here.
I know.
It's the NHL. They're not that scary.
The leading goal scorer in the league.
Come on. We're going to start playing that game?
Well, Matt, there are different levels of play of teams, and one's not guaranteed win night, but there are different levels.
But what I'm saying, this has gone on far enough. We're going to pick and choose our spots to shelter him.
It's just game 1. That's all.
Come on,
you're not sheltering him as a player. You're sheltering him as a guy returning from injury. That's what you're sheltering him from. And the next game that he plays after that is not the return game.
When we were sitting there evaluating the road trip and saying what would be a good day for Thatcher Demco to drop in, well, we discussed the fact there are matinees in Buffalo and Detroit, but yeah, that would be opponents where you feel like you're in good stead if you happen to not play as well in front of them, whereas Minnesota was a different kettle of fish. But we're in a week and 4 games, 5 games on since then now.
I think you should just play tomorrow. End result, just play tomorrow. And then Kevin Lankinen's got nice rest heading into the Florida game. So if he is busy, he'll be ready for it.
Do you think it's going to be a while before they play Thatcher on back-to-back in consecutive games? Is
yes.
That's what I'm hearing?
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
Yes.
So,
in fact, I almost see no need for that until the new year.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, they do. It's every second day here, folks. Tuesday, St. Louis. Thursday, Florida. Saturday, Boston. Monday, Colorado.
Back-to-backs.
Wednesday, Utah. And then you're a back-to-back Utah-Vegas on an itty-bitty quick flyaway.
So even if you're alternating starts, you're still playing fairly regularly here.
No, it's true.
You're
You're playing twice in 5 days.
It's not like you can't get into a groove playing at that pace. I think both of them can.
Yeah. After the She Loves move, Canucks News Summary's doing a fantastic job of calculating the cap. Cap space at $1.15 million, an estimated deadline cap space of over $5.2. And, of course, they got Miller and Forbert returning at some point. Elliott continues to say, Friedman, on 32 Thoughts, that management wants to wait till everyone is back and assess what they got before pulling the trigger on a trade. I've said it before, but I sense a little bit of smokescreen in there. We know Rutherford and Alvin are early movers. We know the glaring areas of need on this team. We know it's going to be competitive on the defenseman trade market because there are so many teams that are in it and are looking to upgrade their top four. I do wonder whether it's still a little bit of hesitancy on behalf of the sellers. You may have to ride this out through the holiday roster freeze later this month. But from what Dreger tells us, and you'll hear this coming up, I believe the Canucks are as active as they have always been on the trade market, and that means they are one of the most active clubs in the National Hockey League, making calls, seeing where they can improve their hockey team.
I don't know about you. I'm not a big shopper. But when I have the time and I'm in the right headspace, I carve out a time. Okay, I'm going to go. I need a new suit and tie, whatever. I need a shirt. I'm going to go and I'm going to pop into this store and get it. And then you get into that store and there's nothing left. None of your sizes around. It's the end of the sale. It's all, and you're just kind of like, I'm ready to go here, but it's not here. And I wonder if that's Patrick Alvin right now of like, I'm ready to roll here, but there ain't nothing in my size.
Well, let's hope he's not a 37.5 sleeve.
It's tough to find those.
Quite hard.
Yeah.
And sometimes when the sleeve is big enough, the rest of the shirt, not so much.
I've got a thick neck compared to the rest of my body, so I've got like the neck of somebody who's heavier. Doesn't work sometimes.
Anyways, look, I don't dispute that the Canucks do want to see what their team looks like when everybody's healthy. I don't dispute that they look at it and say, Derek Forbert has had such a star-crossed first couple of months here in Vancouver.
And he's been brought into play in just these circumstances.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The poor guy lost his father, had to go home. He suffered an injury. When he did play early, it didn't go very well. Let's try and get him a handful of games, a run of games, see if he can settle down, see if he can be the player that he was in Boston and LA beforehand. I completely, I don't dispute that for a second. But I think deep down they also know, even if Forbert comes back and is the guy that they want, that they thought he could be, I still think they know they need at least one, if not two defensemen.
Well, Matt,
would you not be in outstanding stead, Blake, if your third pair was Soucy and Myers and your first two guys off the bench were Brandstrom and Forbert?
Yeah.
Or even if just, one of those guys is your seventh defenseman, one of them's playing every single night.
That sounds like a big cost, though. Like, what are you paying for? We're paying for that.
Yeah, and that's why you've got to make the call. Are you all in this year, or are you going to continue to make the improvements, but not necessarily take the biggest swings?
I'm sure we'll get to Lekramaki in a second here.
We're about to get to it.
But, there's some currency that's improving there, so it depends on
their belief.
Is there But before we get to that, you saying that, do they want to see what this team looks like healthy? Doesn't every team have that? Like, every team believes that if we only had all these guys available, we'd be way better. Like the Chicago Blackhawks would say that.
Well, and the reality of NHL life is very rarely are you going to have your 12 best forwards, your 6 best defensemen, and your 2 best goaltenders available.
And Matt, we saw that season actually play out for the Canucks last year.
We did.
And then they got to the playoffs, and the guys started to leave. No Besser in Game 7. No Demko available.
No.
So, you can have the best laid plans over 82 games, which is rare enough as it is. But come the playoffs, it's a different animal.
Which is why you need depth.
That's right.
And it's also, and look, this is one where, of course, you want to see Miller and Roenick return because they changed the equation. But the other thing here, Blake, that we do have to consider at some point going forward here, are there enough goals in this lineup? Are there enough goals in this lineup, particularly with the way you want to play, and that's holding on to the puck? 85 goals in 26 games. You're about mid-pack there. The big needs clearly are still on defense. But are you going to have enough goals in your lineup in the Stanley Cup playoffs? Because basically, you need to convert at a higher percentage if you're going to be a hang on to the puck as defensive tactic and wait for that terrific scoring opportunity. Pius Suter and 11 goals, magnificent. Kiefer Sherwood stepping up with 8 goals, magnificent. Danton Heinen's got 3. I think we were hoping for more. Out of Danton Heinen. Dakota Joshua has not launched really here. 12 games in, 2 points. Besser was doing very well up until the injury. It's been a little slower since. You brought Sprong in here to hopefully give you some instant offense, help the power play, what have you, and of course he's gone. DeBrusk, you love it when he's hot, but when he's not, there's a lack of goals there on Elias's wing or on Miller's swing when he was playing there earlier in the year. So, look, a lot of time left here, but a lot of interesting scenarios playing out for Alvin in terms of where to go about improving your team. Dreger's long told us third line center was something they were talking about at the beginning of the year.
There was a lot of wingers brought in, and there's been some good stories that you've chronicled here with Suter and Sherwood in particular. But if one of Höglander, Joshua, or Heinen is alongside Sherwood, how much better would that feel?
No, I know.
Just one.
And I should have noted Höglander as well because he's probably the biggest.
I'm not asking for all 3 of those guys
No,
to be
just
hit on.
one.
If
Just one.
That's 5 more goals in your lineup, let's say.
And
6 more
are the
goals.
law of averages that one of those guys will in the remaining 2/3 of the season? I would think so.
You got a 1 in 3 chance here. That's pretty good.
That's not bad.
You'd think it would happen.
And you have Jonathan Lekramaki. And folks, if you missed the weekend that was for the Abbotsford Canucks, they swept a 2-game series against Colorado. Lekramaki had a pair of 2-goal games. 4 goals on the weekend, 5 points. He is up to 14 points in 14 games with 10 goals in the American Hockey League. This after dipping a toe last year. Is it possible he's too good for the American Hockey League? Is it possible that call-up we saw earlier in the year when he got the 5-game cameo, he scored the 1 beautiful goal, is a sign of something to come, whereby it's going to be push from below, improvement from within, all of the things that we've talked about for seemingly a decade, Blake, finally coming home to roost.
And the how matters here, too, in that he scored in a number of different ways over the weekend. The breakaway was dads against the boys kind of breakaway. Like it was like the goalie was in the corner and he's putting it into an empty net because of the deke. Off the rush, gets the rebound straight off the pads to him at the circle, fires it in. Tips in front. Like honestly, really good stuff, really good signs from a star scorer that he can score in a number of ways as
and especially on the different ice surface, right?
Yeah.
Like you score in different ways in international hockey on the European ice.
And he's a young kid,
And
lightweight
so
kid, and he's in the AHL
exactly
scoring like this.
Figuring out how to score between the dots in tight spaces.
No, it's encouraging.
With defenders nearby. So this is an awesome development for the Canucks. And if it was an awesome development for the Canucks in isolation, that would be one thing. And yet there's more. I mean, I sound like a televangelist. by my electric food dehydrator. But Kirill Kudryavtsev, this was a 7th-round pick, noted for his defensive work at Sault Ste. Marie in the OHL. He's up to 12 points. Elias Paterson, EPD, he's up to 10 points. As our buddy Dave Hall from Canucks Army notes, they are 4th and 6th in scoring amongst 21 and under AHL defenders. And we draw that distinction because in the AHL, we'll have 28 to 32-year-olds who have been playing in the league forever who understand it.
The Willanons of the world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, look, okay, we got some guys struggling up front. Is Lekramaki the tonic there? I would like to be able to sit here and say Kudryavtsev and Paterson this year as solutions. That is probably a bridge too far, Blake. Defenseman, it's a little more difficult, I think. But we have seen it in Vancouver twice over the last decade and a half. Alex Edler came in here, dropped in the lineup, and was just smooth.
Chris Tanev.
And then Chris Tanev. Both of them dropped in at times when you looked at it and went, okay, these guys, I guess they're ready. It seemed a little hasty in both occasions, right?
Yep.
And then their play was so calm, cool, collected, poised, that even coaches like, Alain Vigneault was not exactly a young guy's dream coach, right? You had to earn AV's trust. And both those guys did in rapid succession. Edler, and I can remember that first block of games that Edler played, it was just like, wow, they actually have an NHL defenseman here. It was clear to the eye. The same thing with Tanev. Still remember Bieksa and all those vets in the room looking at it and going, yeah, this guy's an NHL player. Doesn't have an NHL shot, doesn't real much have an NHL body, but he's an NHL player. The point, dare to dream on Kudryavtsev and Elias Paterson EPD.
Imagine if either of them were right shots.
It would.
If either of them were right shots, I think they might be playing right now.
I know.
They might be getting a cup of coffee right now if they have right shots.
Yeah, and that's probably too much of a hope bet right now. But let's track these young men and see how they're doing, and let's evaluate their defensive prowess. We'll talk to Cam Robinson about it tomorrow.
I mean, I just love looking at the top scorers right now. From Lekramaki to Paterson, there are 5 of the top 8 scorers on the farm are age 20 or 21. 5 of the top 8 at the AHL level,
Really?
Matt.
Yep.
Like,
It's terrific. We've said it several times this year. You've got to give them some credit for development. We are now starting, first of all, selecting these guys.
Yeah.
You've got to give the amateur department some credit here, Todd Harvey and his group. But now the development that we're beginning to see as well with young Canucks.
well, that 2022 draft, Lekramaki, Paterson, and Kudryavtsev.
That could be, we could be talking about that draft for years to come.
Yeah.
And look, your law of averages approached with the 3 wingers, what, Heinen, Joshua,
And
and
Hoglander.
Hoglander.
Yeah.
If you just get one of Kudryavtsev and Paterson, if one of them turns into an
Yep.
NHL
And I think it's-
stalwart.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a saying in baseball, if you have 4 pitching prospects, you have one. Because one's probably going to blow a shoulder, one's going
Right.
to, fastball will be exposed at the upper levels, but same sort of applies here. One last note, talking about young players, Beckett Seneca has now been added to the World Junior tryout camp. So it's only the one healthy top 10 pick who has been left off the tryout camp roster. Lindstrom and Tej Ginla, the 2 British Columbia forwards, are hurt and can't
So
participate.
the snubs have now been redeemed a little bit here.
And you do wonder whether Hockey Canada looked around and went, oh boy, we better at least bring this freaking guy to camp. We're getting raked over the coals. Let's get to today's menu. It is brought to you by Greta Bar, a fantastic spot to catch all the games, home and away. Your steps from the stadium, minutes from the arena. We're going to be there for some Canucks Army viewing parties. In fact, we have the Canucks Army Christmas party this week. David Quadrelli is master of ceremonies. Your The street food menu, the arcade, we've told you many times about it, weekly drink specials, Greta Bar, the place to be, 50 West Cordova. Greta, let the games begin. Darren Dreger is going to join us. Talk to him about JT Miller. Talk to him about what Patrick Alvin is doing. Talk to him about when these sellers are ready to sell. And oh boy, is there a matter before the commissioner with the Ottawa Senators and New York Rangers. Reasonably new Senators owner Michael Landlauer did not appreciate hearing his best player or his top forward Brady Tkachuk's name in trade rumors last week in the New York Post. He is making accusations of soft tampering. The Rangers have replied to that already. This was supposed to be a quiet Board of Governors meeting. Gary probably thought he would have some time to sit in the Florida sun, have a pina colada or something like that. And sure enough, he's going to be asked about. And we've talked to Gilman about this. July 1st now. Who are we kidding? Who are we kidding?
But Matt, none of those examples apply here because soft tampering suggests that somebody's trying to get an upper hand on a negotiation. There is no negotiation possible here. Brady Tkachuk is under contract.
What they're worried about is Brady Tkachuk going, oh boy, I'm building a house in New Jersey and the Rangers want me. I want out of Ottawa.
But Matt, that's just absolute blinders on. You're Brady freaking Tkachuk. Of course, if you were available via trade, the Devils, the Rangers, the Islanders would all be interested. Are you kidding me?
Yep. Fair enough. J-Pat as well joining the big program here on Monday. Time for our Bet365 Bets of the Day. This segment proudly sponsored by Bet365. I won with Brock Besser as a goal scorer Friday against Columbus.
I don't recall my bet.
Oh,
okay. Would love to know.
So since I won and had the honor, the Anaheim Ducks made a big bet on Jacob Trouba here. I say that because they're going to pay him $8 million for the remainder of this year and next year to be a character defenseman.
Mm-hmm.
But, you're the captain of the New York Rangers and you walk into the Ducks dressing room with a little bit of fire in your belly because effectively you got pushed out. I think that catches the attention of some young players. Probably want to put on a good show for the new guy. They're in Montreal tonight against a not very good Habs team. Give me the Ducks at plus 125 to beat the Habs.
I think I might have done the Seahawks to cover, which
you did. Yeah.
So
you did now that I think of it.
Joe Burrow against this Cowboys team.
What's left of this Dallas defense? Yeah.
Right. So I really like the options here. I know it's a little gaudy. It's a little bit risky. Mm-hmm. But I think he's going into the end zone 3 times. 3 touchdown passes for Joe Burrow for plus 200.
I was looking at some Joe Burrow props as well. Like, will he light up Dallas tonight in Dallas on Monday Night Football? Open an account with Bet365 today. Bet on a huge range of markets. So whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Use code NATION when opening that account. Darren Dreger coming up next.
I'll be honest, I don't get to many games anymore, whether it be at the arena or the stadium. Ticket availability cost, it's a bit of an issue these days. So I prefer to go where there's atmosphere and I know I can get in. Greta Bar YVR. Soak up all the atmosphere with your fellow fans and enjoy a great night with a great street food menu. I prefer the poutine. Weekly drink specials as well at Greta Bar YVR at 50 West Cordova. And we'll be having our viewing parties there all season long as well. Your pregame, your postgame, it's at Greta Bar YVR, 50 West Cordova. Let the games begin.
Harrison Price from the Historic Wall Center. Our next segment brought to you by Ben Moss. Proudly Canadian-owned, operated, history dating back more than 100 years. 5 locations in British Columbia, Abbotsford, Victoria, Chilliwack, Willowbrook, and Langley, and Coquitlam Center, committed to customer satisfaction. Check out a large selection of Canadian mine diamonds, lab-grown diamonds. They got mine diamonds with payment plans to suit your needs. For more information, check out benmoss.com. Ben Moss, for the love of jewelry. And we head to Florida, where TSN hockey insider Darren Dreger of the Rain Dregs Hockey Podcast is busy covering the Board of Governors meeting. Typically boring, This one may have some spice. We will get to that in a moment, Dregs. But first, you've got some word on JT Miller.
Yeah, I mean, it's been expected, right, that JT Miller would eventually make his return, of course, to the Vancouver Canucks. And the good news is they are targeting Wednesday, where he will practice. That's the expectation with the Canucks. Beyond that, though, fellas, as you would expect, the organization is going to leave it entirely up to JT to decide when he's ready to jump back into the league and back into the Canucks lineup on a full-time basis. But you could make a pretty easy argument, couldn't you, that the Vancouver Canucks desperately need him back into the mix. And, you know, it sounds like he's recharged. It sounds like he's excited about coming back. But again, the official return of JT Miller from a regular season perspective is going to be up to him. And that'll be a decision that's made in concert with head coach Rick Tocchet.
At this point, I think I'd ask him to play defense if he does come back on Wednesday. They're in such dire need back there. It'll be tricky, and I'm sure you don't have the answer necessarily. Generally, the rule is if you practice, you're available to speak to the media. Do you think he'll chat on Wednesday with the folks?
I mean, it's a good question. Maybe, depending on how he feels. I mean, right. I don't think that there's anything to hide here. He's probably not going to disclose any deep thoughts that he may or may not have around his personal situation, and nor should he have to. I mean, that's confidential stuff. But I think that everybody around has been pretty transparent in acknowledging, okay, well, here's why JT needed to take the leave of absence. And we know that it was a combination of factors, including some physical issues that he was, going to have to heal up from. And it sounds like for the most part, he's done that. But how far into it, when he's willing to speak, you're right, by letter of the NHL public relations law, he is supposed to be available if he participates in a full practice. But I don't know.
They could say he's in treatment and hide him for another day. And
or maybe the media justifiably just goes, okay, we'd love to hear from him. We of course want to talk to him.
But if he's not ready, he's not ready. Yeah.
If he's not ready, that's fine. We can wait a little bit longer.
His old team, his Indigenous team, the New York Rangers, boy, have they been busy. They forced the trade with Trouba to Anaheim. They re-sign Igor Shesterkin.
Yeah.
And they are being accused of soft tampering by Ottawa Senators owner Michael Landauer with Brady Tkachuk. Boy, we used to say never a dull moment around the Vancouver Canucks, but I do think the Rangers are taking the cake this season.
Yeah, I get it. So this is what's interesting about this. So when this day first started, so you've got Pierre LeBrun, myself, Chris Johnson, some other assembled media here in Florida, and you more or less have a handle on what the agenda looks like. And these are board meetings. So you've got appointed board of governors, alternate governors, a lot of NHL owners participate. And a number of the heavyweights are here, which isn't always the case either. I mean, they kind of pick and choose when they attend these meetings. So we're looking at what we believe is the day's agenda. And we're talking about national television rights and stuff that, for anybody watching us, it's eye glazing. Who's kidding who? I mean, talk about putting lipstick on a pig. Then all of a sudden, Pierre LeBrun emerges after a sit-down interview with Michael Landauer, the owner of the Ottawa Senators, this morning. And he goes, ooh. As Jamie McLennan always says, we've got a spicy meatball here. And that's what it was. I mean, Landauer clearly upset with his captain, Brady Tkachuk, being quote unquote targeted in a New York Post story last week, right? The implication is that the New York Rangers, of course, that's what was reported by Larry Brooks, are eventually targeting Brady Tkachuk. Now, in fairness, and people should go online and read LeBrun's story in The Athletic, because there are full quotes from Landauer there. And, I don't believe Landauer actually acknowledges the New York Rangers, but come on. I mean, we know the report that he's speaking of. That juiced things up, got things going, and already. So we did a hit online, a digital hit, probably an hour or so ago, maybe an hour, 15 minutes ago. And the New York Rangers apparently, reportedly, have already responded with a statement that basically says this is outrageous. And we're going to take our concerns up with Commissioner Gary Bettman. So stay tuned, fellas. This is going to be a far more entertaining, interesting day than I thought it was when I first got up this morning.
He's basically targeting you, Adam Schefter, Tom Bogert, and anybody else that does insider business. I mean, that's what trade rumors are, Michael. Yeah. Like, honestly, it's a little bit curious. I mean, this is a first-time sports owner.
Yeah.
I mean,
or first-time big. Yeah.
Yeah, he's been in ownership for a long time, dating back with the Montreal Canadiens. You know what? I will say this about Andlauer, and no different than the Aquilinis, any pro sports owner. Some are more passionate than others. Some are more vocal and volatile than others. They all share a passion, right? But they are loyal to the core. That's what they are. And so this one, maybe because it's not the first time that Brady's name has been out there and loosely linked in trade speculation. I guess this one was enough. It was just flat out enough for Andlauer that he speaks out in the fashion that he did. So we'll see where it goes from here. I can guarantee you again, though, Commissioner Bettman, Deputy Commissioner Bill Daly, they did not expect that they'd be putting out an ownership fire at the beginning of this meeting. And that's what it is. When you think of heavy hitter owners in pro sport, James Dolan, the Dolan family who own the New York Rangers, they're big shooters. So this one's going to be fun.
Let's face it, guys. Like, that would be the number one insecurity of a Senators fan, is that Brady Tkachuk wants out. Yes.
Especially with the way they're playing, Blake.
If all of a sudden somebody credible suggested that Quinn Hughes wants to go to New Jersey to join his brothers, I mean, it would rattle the foundations of the fan base, right? So
correct.
You can understand where Andlauer's coming from, but that said, this is just the business, man.
It is, but and you're bang on, and I think that's what makes it borderline reckless as far as the Ottawa Senators are concerned, because you're right. I mean, Connor McDavid has a contract negotiation that's coming up in the not too distant future with the Edmonton Oilers. I mean, why wouldn't the Rangers or any team target Connor? Like, come on. I mean, you could make that case with practically any superstar, and Quinn and his brothers are certainly in that category. And I think that's really why Andlauer is lashing out. I think that's the appropriate way to describe it. But what I know is that Bettman will say, okay, I work for you. You're the owner. I am employed by the owners. But in the future, if you're going to lob a grenade like this at another organization, please give me the heads up. Please give me the courtesy call, and perhaps I could talk you off the ledge before doing it. So.
Well, we should know that Brady Tkachuk has 3 years left on his deal after this season. It is perfectly fine if the New York Rangers internally want to say, boy, love that Brady Tkachuk. If he ever gets to free agency, we're going to target him. If Ottawa ever wants to move him, we're going to be first in line offering all these assets. And which brings me to the question, Dregs, like whether it's Ottawa, whether it's Montreal or Nashville, how close are sellers to selling here?
Nashville, my goodness.
Well, Barry Trotz recently came out, didn't he, and said, look, I'm willing to wait until Christmas to see where we're at. But there's no quick fix, clearly, with the Nashville Predators. And I think what he's talking about is how active he wants to be in legitimately he's got 3 first-round draft picks. That's going to get the attention of a lot of teams, especially, the bottom half of the league. The problem that Barry has, and a lot of teams, including Vancouver, like Patrick Galvin is busting the phone lines, and that always sounds like the obvious, but, you kind of started this off by talking about defense and how sketchy it is right now in Vancouver. Well, look, I mean, the Canucks GM is I can't be specific to any one guy, but needless to say, he's trying to make deals. The problem is you've got so many teams that are lumped into that same group in both conferences that are 3, 4, 5 points out of a playoff spot and, 3 to 6 points of one another. So unless you're just putting a whole bunch of assets out there the way that the Minnesota Wild did in acquiring David Jiricek from the Columbus Blue Jackets, I think teams like Nashville, maybe Montreal, who in fairness, the Montreal Canadiens have played better of late. Like they've got a little bit more going right now in Montreal, which has taken some of the heat off of management in Montreal, but there too is a team that's certainly eager. So it just feels to me like anything meaningful is probably going to have to wait until the new year and maybe even early into the second half.
the Preds have got all those draft picks, so theoretically they could acquire and try to salvage the season, but they're just so far out of it now that would seem almost folly. What did you make of Steven Stamkos' comments last week after a game where he was alluding to something? And I didn't see much follow-up on that, Dregs, as to what he was talking about. Basically, it sounded, and these are my words, not his, like he was questioning people in the room to some degree, and he walked it back a little later, but he couldn't take away what he originally said. What do you think that was about?
When it was how he said it too, right, Blake?
Yes.
It wasn't just the language. I mean, he had this pure look of frustration and loss. That's how he looked to me. And, he talked about how difficult it is scoring goals, and it's the hardest thing to do in hockey and all of that. And I think to a degree there would be some internal finger pointing, but there's also guys like Steven Stamkos who aren't afraid to look in the mirror. Right. And he's very self-critical. He knows that he was brought in to generate offense and doesn't feel like he's done enough of that. What I would submit, though, is, Trotz had to know or expect that they were weak up the middle of the ice. End of the day, that's really what it boils down to. Ryan O'Reilly isn't having the year that he had last year, and that's just one of the centers that they have in Nashville. When you're signing, scorers like Stamkos and John Marsh, so you'd better have some pieces up the middle that are creative, that are deceptive, that can play with pace, all of those things. And I think that's been the biggest area of concern, and I know that's an area that Trotz is trying to remedy. He's looking for a centerman. The Calgary Flames looking for a top 6 center. Not too many teams in the league that aren't looking for help on defense or at center ice. So Barry's going to have to dole out some of those assets, those draft picks, maybe even a younger piece. They've got a real nice prospect pool in Nashville if he's going to attract a suitor with a centerman that could be in play.
Outside of their activities with now the senators and the commissioner's office and player agents wondering about, how they are leveraging waivers to get guys to waive their no move. Are the Rangers done? Like, are they still trading? No, they're still at it, huh?
Done. Yeah, they're still at it. And that was crafty work by Chris Drury. Let's give full credit where credit is due. Cutthroat, no doubt about it. But end of the day, it's the New York Rangers, a storied franchise. So many players, as we know, love Manhattan. Everything about the vibe of New York City, especially the American or the Russian, the European-based players, they love it. They love it in New York. I guess you want to be critical. You could be critical of the negotiation when Jacob Trouba or Chris Kreider signed their mega contract extensions because they didn't get the tip to tail no move clause. And evidently, if you're going to play for the New York Rangers, that's what you need. Otherwise, when it shifts as it did in the summer to a modified no trade, well, it's open season. And yeah, we see your 15-team no trade list. Doesn't matter, because if you don't accept a trade, we're going to put you on waivers, and you're going to, it's sad that has to happen. But then you look at it from a business perspective. Drury didn't have to take back any assets, right? He really didn't. So all you're getting is cap relief. Now, I happen to like Jacob Trouba as a player. I think he's a shell of what he was even last year, but he's had the heart and soul sucked right out of him by the New York Rangers in this process dating back to the draft. So they're not done. They have other pieces in play. And the expectation from, again, a spicy owner in James Dolan is that they're contending for the Stanley Cup this year. I don't see it unless Drury has more work to do.
What's Anaheim's motivation there on the Trouba deal?
Yeah, I think just to add a bit more character and depth to the team. And he's a high character guy. There's always been, the stuff that follows Jacob Trouba. And I think that it has more to do with playing in a smallish Canadian market in Winnipeg. And then, of course, how he left Winnipeg, basically forced his way out of Winnipeg and all of that. But what I'm told, well-liked as a teammate. Again, I think he's going to be super motivated. You talk about Stamkos and his comments. How about Trouba the other day with his availability through Anaheim, man? Like, he was just firing darts at New York Rangers management and ownership. So sounds to me like he's a motivated guy, and they've still got a good number of young players there. So having that level of experience, I can appreciate why Pat Verbeek would want it. I don't think that when this season started, he had Jake Trouba's name circled. I don't, unless he was in constant communication, which is also possible with Kurt Overhart, who represents Jake Trouba. And oh, by the way, also represents John Gibson, who's been, part of trade fodder now for 2-3 years. So maybe there was some communication at some point there.
All right, marvelous stuff, Dregs. We'll let you get back to the spicy meatball that is the Board of Governors meeting down in Florida. Fellas. Stay cool, buddy.
It's a good one. All right, thanks, guys.
If you are struggling with things like managing stress, anxiety, relationships, or divorce, reach out to the counselors at Advanced Counseling. Book your free initial consultation today at advancedcounseling.ca.
Secure some price from the historic and very busy Wall Center.
Very busy.
It was quite a weekend here at the Wall. It was quite an exodus this morning.
Christmas, Swiftmas. It was lots going on.
Everything was happening downtown Vancouver.
And for these kinds of reasons, we've been distracted. Fine folks at Nation Gear have decided to extend the Black Friday. Seems like it was 7 weeks ago, because there was the real Black Friday. There was
Black November. It's Black December.
Yeah. We're going to give you another day here.
There you go. Hours left.
Go score some Securus and Price swag or anything else from the Nation
Rink
Network.
Wide swag, yeah. Get it all.
NationGear.ca. Spend over $200, free shipping.
Here's Chef Paterson, the host of Rink Wide Vancouver. A busy boy this weekend, and our Canucks reporter. Survived the weekend in studio here, Jeff?
I did. Yeah. I mean, incredible people watching and a great vibe in the city. Like, it was fun.
Yeah,
My wife got to the show on Friday. We talked about that on Friday.
Yeah.
I heard about it all weekend long, obviously. But with the early start and working out of the studio, they are going to have some cleanup. Sparkles are going to exist for days and weeks around the Wall and probably around the entire city. But no, it was good for the city. It was a fun vibe. I went to Canucks practice on Saturday. Skated in the noon hour, finished up at about 1:30, and I came out, and the sun was shining, and already, like, the buzz in downtown Vancouver, like, it had just a different feel to it, and I thought, it's fun. I mean, fun was the atmosphere for the weekend. Not so much fun at Rogers Arena yesterday, but fun, nevertheless, in the city for the weekend.
Hey,
This is one of the reasons why you invest in a big public stadium, to have shows like this come through that would otherwise skip this city and put smiles on, 180,000 faces by the end of the weekend.
Good on the Canucks for getting the win on Friday, despite not getting to 20 shots. First game back from the road trip, so they bucked that trend. But it was a little concerning, maybe the manner in which they got the victory, not getting to 20 shots. And then it all manifested on Sunday, didn't it? I mean, they stayed in the game. It was close. They had a chance to get points out of that game, obviously. But, man, were the holes in the roster evident on Sunday, huh?
Yeah, just quickly on Friday, credit to them for gutting it out and coming back. Helped considerably by a wandering Elvis in the late stages of the second period. Still not sure what Elvis Merzlikins was doing, but hey, Canucks took advantage there. It's a 2-1 hockey game. If they go to the third, down a goal, maybe Columbus just parks the bus and who knows how it goes. But at 2-2, you sort of felt like the Canucks would roar back, and they did. And they needed that because, they give it away against a Tampa team that was starting a road trip yesterday, an early start time for both clubs. But Canucks had shown out on their own road trip that early starts, they were able to grind out victories. They were the second best team on the ice, and yet saying that, they were 4 minutes away from getting something out of the hockey game. And alas, a too many men on the ice penalty in crunch time, and they couldn't kill it off. And look, how many times, I'm on with you guys twice a week. How many times have we absolutely marveled and raved about Quinn Hughes? And we can do it again on his performance yesterday. But there are other good players in the National Hockey League, and sometimes they rise up too. And Braden Point in on all 4 goals. Nikita Kucherov just doing his thing. He had missed the last couple of games. Didn't look like he had skipped a beat. And those guys took over. And I guess the unfortunate part for the Canucks was it was one of the quietest nights in a while for Elias Paterson and Brock Besser, to a lesser degree Jake DeBrusk, who's been scoring basically nightly. So the guy's allowed to have the occasional off game. But the Canucks top of the lineup didn't have it going. Bottom of the lineup is becoming a bit of a scoring concern, certainly. And then you take Quinn Hughes out of the lineup for 13 minutes. Yeah, you're already without Miller, without Hronek, and now the captain goes down. You're asking a little too much of this hockey club, and ultimately they were plucky until the end, but I do think that the better team ended up winning the hockey game.
If Philip Hronek is still in the lineup when Hughes leaves, I think they probably look a little bit better, but man, were they just treading water when Hughes was gone. I mean, again, if Hronek's there, I think they look a little bit better than that, but, there was nothing there. There was just no help getting the puck going.
No, and for all this talk about slow starts and Friday night getting outshot 17-2 in the opening period and down 2-0, they get a 4-minute power play. Now Quinn Hughes suffers the brunt of the blow and leaves the ice. So, it's an opportunity, obviously, but again, no JT Miller, now no Quinn Hughes. It looked like you think maybe it would. And you're just reminded of how different this team looks when Quinn Hughes is there and doing all those Quinn Hughes things that make him and the hockey club so much better. And Eric Brandstrom stepped in and tried, but they couldn't gain the zone. They couldn't set up. They had one shot in 4 minutes of power play time, like opportunity there to get the jump on a Tampa team far from home. And unfortunately they couldn't. I know they opened the scoring when Quinn got back, but this is kind of wild, guys, and they've got to sort out this home ice thing. Like, they just flat out, they have to. 4 wins in 13 games. They've opened the scoring 5 times on home ice, and they haven't won any of those games. Like, the first goal is supposed to mean something, and yet the only 2-0 lead that they've enjoyed on home ice all season was opening night against Calgary when they got it to 3-0, and even then it wasn't enough, and they ended up losing that hockey game. But, 4 wins in 13 games. When you got 4 more on the homestand and 7 of the next 9 at Rogers Arena, like, if they don't get this thing sorted out, they're not going to play 800 hockey on the road all season. They're not. I looked it up this morning. Dallas was the best road team in the NHL last year. Didn't even play 700 hockey away from home. So there is going to be some regression on the road. And unless they get things moving in the right direction at home, this is a team that right now is in a logjam with a bunch of other teams right around the playoff bar. There's no guarantee that this is a playoff team. And I don't want to be alarmist, but 4 wins in 13 home games, that's not good enough.
No.
So 3-5-2 against playoff teams from last year, 3-5-2 against current playoff teams. Do you just think they are what they are, a team good enough to beat the weak sisters of the NHL, but not good enough to beat the best of the best?
Well, getting JT Miller back in the lineup whenever that happens is going to help. But to say that, hey, they get Thatcher Demco back, look out. Like, Kevin Lankinen's been in the discussion for the team MVP, and in that second period yesterday was heroic. Tampa had 19 shots in the second period, so I don't think you can look at Sunday's game and say, hey, if they had Thatcher Demco, probably a different outcome. I don't think you say that at all. But getting Demko back obviously is going to give them a 1-2 punch if he can get up to speed here. But I mentioned it a little earlier, and I do think now that there have to be some red flags around the hockey club, and I would think internally as well. Like, they don't have Austin Matthews. They don't have a guy that's going to score 60 goals. Even if Brock Besser gets back to 40 goal pace, that means half the games he's not scoring. We know that it's been a sluggish start for Elias Paterson, but he's kind of come out of the fog here. And Jake DeBrusk's been going great guns lately, but those guys aren't going to score every game. And so where is that next wave to support and pick up your top-end players on the nights when they're not going? And Nils Höglander up to 21 goal games now, matching his jersey number. Danton Heinen's at 15. And Dakota Joshua is in a separate silo, but it's been 12. And quite frankly, for me, with Dakota Joshua, and I tread lightly, but games 10, 11, and 12 have looked a lot like games 1, 2, and 3. Like, I'm not seeing a huge progression in his game, and maybe it takes 20 or 25. But I tried to talk to him on Saturday after practice, and he just didn't want to go there. He just didn't want to discuss kind of how slow it's been around him. And I said, do you give yourself a little bit of leeway? And he said, no, I'm in uniform. Like, I have to be better. But he just didn't want to discuss why it's been sort of the struggle that it's been for him. But, you think last year, like, Nils Höglander was a 24-goal scorer. Dakota Joshua was an 18-goal scorer. They were that next layer of scoring support for the Vancouver Canucks. And right now, if the top guys aren't going, it's going to be difficult. And certainly that was part of the case on Sunday afternoon.
Hughes leads all defensemen at 1.23 points per game. If he does that over the 3 games that he has in hand over Cale Makar, he leads all defensemen in scoring. It seems like the Norris Derby is back on. Hughes for Hart. do you think that candidacy picks up here, particularly as we look at the rest of this Vancouver Canucks team and understand what he's got to carry on a night-to-night basis?
I certainly have time for the discussion, but I do think that it's maybe a bridge too far if this team ultimately falls completely out of the playoff picture. It's hard to go down that road. Now, again, they're 26 games in. They got 56 to go, and they should be getting reinforcements here. But, yeah, I mean, he has been that valuable to the Canucks. I think it would be hard to find three other guys that have meant as much to their hockey clubs in the early going as Quinn Hughes has. And one of the knocks on him was always, he doesn't score enough. Well, he showed last year that he can score. And with the goal yesterday, he's 2 off the NHL lead among defensemen. Makar has 9, and Hughes is now up to 7. There are only 3 defensemen in the NHL with more goals than Quinn Hughes. So he has absolutely bridged that gap. And, if that was a knock on him, you can't poke at that anymore because he has scored at this rate now that he's up to 7 goals. Like, he's on pace for 20 plus for the first time in his National Hockey League career. So, again, 13 minutes out of the game, comes back with the bubble. And you just saw an immediate uptick. You felt it in the building. The crowd responded when he got back there. That's what he means to the Vancouver Canucks. And then it didn't take long for him to sort of throw the blind backhander through traffic. And he's such an incredible player. If you watch the replay there, the way he cuts back and cuts into the slot, I even think he used the linesman who hadn't got out of the way out of the faceoff, like to create a little bit of separation just as another layer. Like, hey, guys out there on the ice, he's available to you as a screen and a decoy. Why not? And I wouldn't put it past Quinn Hughes. I know he wasn't available after the game to talk to the media because of getting some more treatment, but I would be curious, and I wouldn't put it past him if he used the linesman as part of his layered screen to fling that backhander in to open the scoring.
Yeah, and speaking of treatment,
I'm not sure I've ever seen a goal like that watching the NHL. Like, honestly, it was...
and he almost scored the same goal later in the game. He didn't have the linesman's help for that one. So he's getting the treatment on the face, obviously, after that game. But just overall, I mean, also just worried about burnout for this guy because he's so very clearly the maestro there. And the day off today obviously helps, but I think we're going to see a lot of those maintenance days. And not because he's necessarily injured per se, but I feel like we're in March territory already when it comes to wear and tear on Quinn Hughes.
Yeah, so because he missed 13 minutes of game action, his overall ice time wasn't huge, obviously, in the game in Ottawa where he got punted after 5 minutes. I mean, that does remove some of the wear and tear, but you're right. I mean, they forced
They're just
him off
hard
the ice.
minutes, though.
Tocchet said whenever they got back off the road, when Thursday, they practiced, and Tocchet said, I had to tell him to go take a seat. And I think that's going to be probably more of the norm here as they play every other day between now and Christmas. Then there'll be a brief break. But, when you think of what's ahead, like not just the stretch drive, Quinn Hughes is going to play a ton of the Four Nations faceoff, right? Like, there's no doubt that he is going to be the main guy on defense on a best-on-best tournament. Now, it's 3 games ultimately, so it's not like it's, a 2-week tournament. But still, like, that's added mileage at the highest level. So he's aware of that, and I'm sure he will do what he has to do. But, yeah, if it requires him taking a little less practice time, then I think that's the prudent play for both him and the hockey club here. But I did think it was interesting that he wanted to practice, and Tocchet said, nope, you're not joining us today in the best interests of the club. You're going to sit this one out.
At the bottom, is Vinny Desharnais a problem right now?
Yeah, nice guy. Had a good laugh with him on Saturday about the breakaway against Columbus and what that might have been, but he's not there to score goals. He is supposed to prevent them. He and Brandstrom got into some trouble on the opening goal against the Blue Jackets, and then yesterday he's on the ice for the first Tampa goal, and then he's in the penalty box moments after, and they score on that power play. So, yeah, I suppose there's going to be a decision here sooner rather than later. Derek Forbort has shed the non-contact jersey. I was curious if they would practice today. Would we see Forbort perhaps and Brandstrom as a third pair? We saw that once in San Jose, and then Forbort got hurt the practice after that and hasn't been seen on the ice in game action since. So not that Derek Forbort is the answer, but if Vinny Desharnais is being used sort of in a strictly defensive posture and some penalty kill, Derek Forbort has been around the block a few times. I think that he can pick up the slack there. Whatever the case, when they signed Vincent Desharnais, I think they saw a Tyler Myers clone. I think they saw what this coaching staff did with Tyler Myers to have him the season that he had a year ago, and they thought they could do the same thing. So this is turning out to be more of a project. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And yeah, you just wonder, especially with Philip Hronek out, like, can you continue to run Vinny Desharnais out there as one of your 6 defenders? I don't think Mark Friedman's going to get an opportunity with Forbort being this close to returning, but they brought Cole McWard up last week for a practice at the very least. Like, at some point, is it worth exploring what you've got down on the farm on the right side? But there is no question, as we sit here 26 games into the season, I don't think that you can look at Vincent Desharnais and think that this is an everyday National Hockey Leaguer on a really robust defensive team.
We'll talk to you Friday in advance of the Bruins game, but the week ahead here, Jeff, was St. Louis and the defending Cup champions, Florida, who, in fairness, the Canucks have already beat this year on Tuesday and Thursday.
Blues are just the definition of an average NHL team. In fact, they are NHL 500 at 13-13 and 2, coming off a loss in Edmonton. But that was the first regulation loss under Jim Montgomery, so they'd responded to the coaching change. But they don't have a double-digit goal score. I think they've got 3 guys on 9 goals, so they don't score an awful lot. And it kind of feels like, yes, maybe this is the softer entry point for Thatcher Demco to return to the net for the first time after backing up twice here. So I'm expecting that Demko is going to get the start, but full team day off on Monday, so we'll have to wait for the morning skate. But that's a gettable game, and much like Columbus, but it's this one step forward, one step back for the Vancouver Canucks, particularly on home ice. They haven't strung consecutive home ice wins together, not just this season, but even in the playoffs. They never strung consecutive home ice wins together. It's been a while since the paying customer has seen the Canucks back up a win with another one, and that's something that has to change here. So you can't start a streak without the first one. See if they can get it against St. Louis, because then, as you said, the defending champs come to town. This time they're going to have Matthew Tkachuk and Alexander Barkov and, West Van Sam Reinhart, who is right back doing what he did last year, leading the NHL. He's got 19 goals already. Panthers are one of the highest scoring teams in the National Hockey League. So that's going to be a challenge. And then Boston, you never know what you're getting from the Bruins on a night-to-night basis. And then the homestand finishes up next week against Colorado. So, they've already kind of put themselves in this position that if they don't beat the Blues, they're going to be chasing the rest of the homestand. And that's exactly what happened on the last 6-game homestand, where they were 2-3 and facing the Rangers, end up losing that one. They go 2-4. That was a disappointing homestand. Again, with 4 wins in 13 games, they have to find and hit the turbo button here at Rogers Arena. The home fans, the paying customers, they deserve it. But if this team is going to get where it wants to go, they do have to start putting better performances on the ice at home.
We're saying, if you're going to, have the antidote for that last homestand and go 4-2 on this homestand, now you put yourself in the position to go 3-1 the rest of the way, and there's a big win somewhere in that group, either against the Florida Panthers or the Colorado Avalanche, if you plan on going 3-1. So they're going to have to pull it up.
Yeah, and 7 of the next 9 at home, and you look we talk about St. Louis, Boston, again, just where the Bruins are. I think that's a gettable game. You've got Ottawa before Christmas, Seattle right after Christmas. San Jose's in there as well. There are opportunities, but again, if you're going to do some of the things that the Canucks have done on home ice, and so many guys that haven't scored on home. I was looking at this morning, too, guys. Daniel Sprong opened the scoring this season. Remember, he scored the first goal of the year against Calgary. He's tied with Jake DeBrusk and Nils Höglander in goals scored at Rogers Arena, and still has more than Danton Heinen and Dakota Joshua, and he's got 1 less than Connor Garland at home. So, yes, we withered Daniel Sprong, who no longer lives here, but some guys have to find a way to push past Daniel Sprong on the home ice statistics. Otherwise, we're going to be talking about this for a while.
He will be a trivia question if they go on to do great things.
Yes,
who
perhaps.
Scored the first goal of the
total
magic? A guy who lasted 9 games, Daniel Sprong. Marvelous stuff, Jeff. Have a great week on Rink Wide, and we'll catch up Friday.
Sounds good, guys. Thanks.
If you are struggling with things like managing stress, anxiety, relationships, or divorce, reach out to the counselors at Advanced Counseling. Book your free initial consultation today at advancedcounseling.ca.
It's Harrison Price from the historic Wall Center, where you turn game night into a game weekend. Book your stay at the Wall Center. Enjoy a exclusive Harrison Price rate. Call 604-331-1000. Mention Harrison Price. Some blackout dates apply based on availability. The Seattle Seahawks, they're back, man. Remember we used to say every Seahawks game is the same, every Seahawks game is different, and, fourth quarter dramatics, and yet you just had confidence that they would pull out those victories. They're at it again. 30-18 over Arizona in Glendale. You made the point to me, Arizona scores early in the fourth quarter, and you think, oh, boy, here we go again.
They're going to make it interesting.
No. Stake through the heart of the Cardinals. Minus Kenneth Walker. Zach Charbonnet, 91 yards after contact, the most by a player in any game this season. He finishes with a $134, 2 touchdowns on 22 carries. Also added 59 receiving yards, the most productive game of his 2-year NFL career.
Matt, their number 2 running back had 40 yards.
Yeah.
Like
McIntosh.
Oh, it's unbelievable.
I've heard a lot of griping about Charbonnet from the 12s. Understandably so. He's a clunky runner. Like he is not a breakaway threat usually, but he's a big and tough runner.
Yeah.
And boy, this time of year, I realize that was a warm weather game, but I do wonder whether they've discovered something here that may help them even further in the playoffs. Interceptions by Ernest Jones and Kobe Bryant, and here's why that's
huge ones too. Timing.
Yeah, not only are they forcing all sorts of turnovers out of Kyler Murray, that continued from the last game just a couple weeks ago between the Cards and Hawks, but those are the two guys that have stabilized this defense now. Mike McDonald needed a true Mike middle linebacker to make the system go, and Ernest Jones has been that since his trade acquisition. And then Kobe Bryant at the back, hearing so much about the safeties, and we need safeties back there. He's a converted corner. He's got a ton of interceptions here in the last little bit. So you're better on defense. Even the new right guard looked okay, for God's sake. So a lot of things tracking the Seahawks' way. They're 8-5, continue to be the NFC's 3 seed, continue to be on a showdown with collision course with Green Bay in the opening round of the playoffs, but an important division win because here's the thing. Your other two opponents won too. The 49ers destroy Chicago, and the Rams in one of the games of the year, 44-42 over Buffalo. Josh Allen runs for 3 touchdowns, throws for 3 touchdowns. How about this stat? Entering today, teams with 6 touchdowns and 0 giveaways in the Super Bowl era, 245-0. That was the first time a team had scored 6 touchdowns without a turnover and lost the football game.
I think Rams fans are probably saying the same thing as Seahawks fans, and I know there are Seahawks who are waiting for me to say this, but I'm proud of the Seahawks. That was a good road game, well managed, well called, everything.
Got up early. Yep.
And I think the Rams are probably saying the same things. They got scared by a really good team, but they didn't let the Bills get so close that, they had possession. They managed that game to the end. They're probably pretty proud about the way they shepherded that game home, too. So,
for sure.
And of course, the Rams have got the game on the Seahawks already this season. Makes the, remember, the finale of the Seahawks schedule is against the Rams. So it means that really the Seahawks can't take a breath. Like 8-5 is a nice divisional leading record. It's not gaudy, but it doesn't look like it's going to be the weak division that'll look like it was going to be.
But that'll be the NFC South.
I think they need to get to 10 wins for sure.
Yeah. I was bullish on the Rams before at the start of the year. Now that they're healthy, I think you're seeing their true colors. And here's the thing, 12s. You have a date with Thursday Night Football, and hold your nose, you will be rooting for the San Francisco 49ers over the LA Rams, because that's the derby now. You're 2 up on San Francisco and Arizona. You're 1 up on the Rams. Boy, would it be a nice little turn of events if you could sit there and go in a game and a half up on the Rams. Into that Packer game on Sunday night.
Is 2-2 good enough the rest of the way? 10-7? You mean in the division 10-7?
Yeah, well, so it's good enough if one of those wins is against the Rams.
Right.
Otherwise, if it's 2-2 and the Rams go 3-1, then that's that, because the Rams will have the tiebreaker.
Yeah.
So if they win the second meeting. Shout out to Chuba Hubbard of the Carolina Panthers. It has, needless to say, not been a great year for Carolina. But he becomes the second Canadian running back to eclipse 1,000 yards. Ruben Mace, 38 years ago with the New Orleans Saints, if you remember, from Saskatchewan, Washington State guy. Ruben Mace was a darn good NFL running back. Nice to see Chuba eclipse.
And he's turned into, a go-to back
in
the NFL.
He's been that.
He's sixth in NFL rushing this year.
Yep. And Saquon's got a shot at 2,000. Like you, me, and everybody else who declared the death of the running back and will never see anybody flirt with 2,000 again.
Well, Derrick Henry's not going to get to 2,000, but he's going to be 1,800 yards is certainly within.
I cannot stand Nick Sirianni at all, but I find myself rooting a little bit for the Eagles because of the Saquon Barkley story.
Yeah.
I would love to be able to contemplate a team with an excellent rushing game and great defense being able to win a Super Bowl in this era. It just seems so quarterback-driven. Big signing in baseball. Maple Ridge's Tyler O'Neill, a 3-year deal to the Baltimore Orioles.
Yes, that's the one you wanted to talk about.
Maple Ridge's Tyler O'Neill will make $50 million or nearly on this deal. Maple Ridge's Tyler O'Neill is paid more than any hockey player the world over.
How about that? That's a great way of putting it.
And then there was Juan Soto. I beginning of the offseason, a couple of Blue Jays fans, friends of mine, we were all talking about Soto, and I said, I just can't see it because Cohen with the Mets will go over $700 million. And sure enough, he went over $750
million.
Was
the first couple articles written
at $51 million for Juan Soto.
There was a couple articles early that said, you're going to have to get to like $550 million at least for Soto.
No, that was pie in the sky.
$200 million later, they're at $750.
Well, and how about several years ago, Blake, you'll remember the Mariners did this with Julio Rodriguez. But really the trendsetter in this was Alex Anthopoulos in the Atlanta Baseball Club. They went out and said to their young guys, we will give you long-term deals. They gave Ronald Acuna $100 million over 8 years. He said yes. Now, Ronald Acuna is not of the Juan Soto level, and he's had some injury problems. But on today's market, Acuna is a $500 million player. Vladdy Guerrero, I think, is now a $500 million player at the end of next year if he continues performing as he does with the Blue Jays. Speaking of, they've lost Jordan Romano, of course, non-tendered him, but now he signs with the Philadelphia Phillies. And then how about this from John Heyman, who broke the story on Soto? Terrific Major League Baseball insider. He reports that Mets owner Steve Cohen had Soto to his Beverly Hills mansion. Other teams did the meetings at the agent's office. He took him to the Beverly Hills mansion. He had the staff prepare a Latin-themed lunch for the group. And they also brought the club's director of security. Why? Soto was apparently upset early this season that an overzealous Yankees security guard disallowed a family member and his chef/driver from certain areas of the ballpark. So the Mets, according to Heyman, were aware and brought this guy with them and told him that will never happen in Queens at Citi Field. So those little personal touches on top of $765 million. I'm going to guess that.
I don't think he felt cheap after that.
No.
Cheapened.
No. The Galaxy are MLS Cup champions. They beat the Red Bulls on Saturday. Scored twice early on and then hung on at the end.
But they did it without their MVP.
Yes.
Which is pretty impressive.
Very quiet on the Caps head coaching front right now. Do you anticipate something before Christmas?
I mean, if we're listening to what Axel said at the end of the season, no, I wouldn't say it's a necessity.
So it does look like the Caps are, and there was a trade window open today that the Caps did not avail themselves of.
There's only 2 deals, yeah.
But, it does look like this is going to be a head coach who is handed a team. in a roster and told go out and do something with it, as opposed to a coach who is going to be right in there.
TFC wants Jim Curtin too, so if it is Jim Curtin, they may have to compete for his services.
And Commissioner Don Garber did speak at his State of the League address about matching the world calendar for soccer, which I just think would be terrible for this market, to wait all those nice weather months and not have the Caps on the pitch.
They would for August. They just wouldn't
you're
have them for
June, July, May, April, even April. You can have some really nice days through those 4 months where it's.
Well, they play in April. And MLS Cup would be awarded in May. And
then would they play in April then? That's
Yeah.
last couple rounds of the playoffs. Yeah. Anyways, I think that would be horrible for this market. I understand it makes things easier in terms of not having to stop your playoffs for international breaks and awarding your championship in December when you're back at it in training camp at the end of January. And lastly, congratulations to our friend and longtime associate, Steve Haggard of Northlands Golf Course. Last week named BC Golf's Superintendent of the Year at their annual association meeting on Thursday. Steve and his crew doing a sensational job keeping Northlands in tip-top condition. Despite that, it's a public golf course. It gets a lot of rounds, and it is always in beautiful,
resort
it
quality
really is.
conditions.
So congrats to Steve and Rob and Fesha, the whole crew there, everybody who works on the grounds crew at Northlands. It's a team award, I'm sure he'd say.
Yeah.
Poll question results from Friday. Which tickets would you rather use, not resell? Canucks Columbus, 4 lower bowls, or 2 upper bowls, Taylor Swift. The winner here, Blake, was?
Given our audience, I'll say Canucks tickets.
It was Canucks. It was close, I will tell you that.
Oh, okay.
56% voted Vancouver Canucks. Uncle Terry, not at all a Taylor fan, but the concert will be much more entertaining than whatever the Columbus Blue Jackets have to offer. Ryan, I'll take the Swift tickets just because my lady would be over the moon.
Also, 40 other games to go to
exactly.
for the Vancouver Canucks.
Errors and omissions from Friday's program and beyond. A couple to note here. Jeff Merrick got a little confused on math. He had, where did he have it here? Oh, here we go. He had Höglander already on the $3 million ticket. It is the $1.1 million ticket this year, so he got confused on the math and the difference between Höglander and Paterson compensation. And then maybe we're not giving Bill Belichick's interest in the North Carolina head football coaching job enough credence. Blake, it came out Friday, and the insiders are saying he's still in the mix for the gig. It came out Friday that perhaps he is looking to pave the way for his son Steve, who's the defensive coordinator with
Apparently
the
it's in the
Washington
contract.
Huskies, that if he were to take over as the Carolina head coach, that his son would be the head coach and waiting. And then, Blake, we also didn't consider the fact his 24-year-old girlfriend.
Sorry, what now?
His 24-year-old girlfriend.
This is the younger Belichick's 24-year-old?
This is Bill Belichick's 24-year-old girlfriend.
Belichick's son's girlfriend? I'm
No.
hoping you mean?
She's a Carolina gal. Big Tar Heels fan.
And she has to be home by 10 o'clock every night? Unbelievable.
They sat beside each other on a plane.
And
He helped her out with a presentation.
And I'm just sure that charisma won her over.
They fell in love. Age is just a number. Mm-hmm. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Appreciate you spending some time and connecting with us. Please do subscribe to all our assorted channels, YouTube, wherever you get your podcast. Follow on social. That's Twitter. X, Insta, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, and Blue Sky, live on many of those platforms. Noon Pacific time weekdays, and of course, support those community sponsors you hear us talking about. Keep it local.